So going to the Emirates for the first time was very, very special. I haven't seen anything like it before. From the flashy cars to the huge masajid to the very, very tall skyscrapers. It was just something that I really did not expect to see. So we landed in the airport in Abu Dhabi, and it had a luxury vibe to it, of course. It was very clean, system was efficient as ever. MashaAllah, it was really, really nice. And I didn't have any issues getting through the immigration at all. But as soon as we stepped out the airport, it was like I was gonna die. Like, it was that hot. It was crazy. I never experienced anything like it in my life. I can say that confidently. That was the worst heat I felt ever. And I'm not sure when that was. It might have been like summer, maybe, might have been summer. But it was scorching. Like, it was deadly. We had an issue of going in and out because we felt the heat and we said, heck no, we need the AC. So we keep going in and out, and it's hard. You can't just park in front of the airport. Of course, it's crowded, right? So we keep going in and out, and they keep calling us saying, okay, are y'all out? We don't see y'all. They have to circle back around. And we did that for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. No joke. Like, we were trying our best to not be burnt to death. It was crazy, subhanAllah. So when we finally did get out, alhamdulillah, we went straight into a car, threw the luggage in the back, and we made our way. But what I noticed that did really, really change my perception, because I thought it was just desert and, some skyscrapers, right? This is me coming from Egypt, right? So I'm assuming that the sand is dirty, like rubble, basically. But over there is sounds bad to say dust, but it's a lot lighter. The sand actually looks good. It don't look bad. Sounds funny, but it doesn't look bad, right? But as we drove deeper into Al Ain, you did have a lot of greenery. So that did surprise me. You had your palm trees, you had your bus system, you had everything going even at that time. So it was really, really comfortable. It felt like, okay, everything was there, right? You had your shopping centers, you had the mall, you had even the zoo. Everything was in the vicinity. It was all in the same area. And Al Ain is not huge, but it's decent size. So as soon as we drove into the villa compound, right, it was not that big. It was pretty small. I think you had one gate. You leave and come through the same gate. But when you drive into it, it's like you're driving on a sidewalk. It's not really a street, like a paved road, right? Which was quite interesting. But it was villas just scattered around, maybe like 4 or 5 in one row. And then you had like some space, but overall it felt homey. You know what I mean? Everybody had a car park, right? It had two car parks for each villa. But as soon as we stepped out that car, oh my God, the heat is it's just unbearable. Well, for me, because I've experienced heat, I've experienced crazy heat, but over there it was different. It wasn't even like, it was like dry. Was it really like dry heat? It was a level of humidity there as well. So it was just burning, like on both sides. It was humid as well as just dry heat. It was just there. So what I did notice is the cleanliness as well. Like, as we were driving, it was clean, right? Very clean, actually. You don't find garbage on the side of the road. You don't find people littering for the most part. You have the people cleaning the streets and so on, and maintaining, right? So the maintenance is there. Later on, actually, we did go to a shawarma place, but it was like a little souk strip area, right? And it's like an outdoors market, right? And it was different. Like, it gave a different vibe to it for sure, but it still wasn't super bad, right? But it was where, a lot of the brothers there were like Pakistani, Indians, and so on. So I'm assuming they were like worker class people that were there. But the food there was really, really good. So one of the first things that we did was go to a local mall. And that's where I first saw the local Emiratis, but they were in groups. And as time went on, of course, we saw that it was normal. They travel in groups, especially the women, right? The women travel in groups. The men, you'll see them for sure as well, but not necessarily all the time in groups, but definitely for the women in groups. And they have their dress code, you know what I mean? Usually they're all matching, same attire, right? So you could usually tell that they're Emirati because of their attire. They usually wear the thobe. They have their sandals. They have their ghutra. And their complexions usually are like fair skin to like brown, light brown, and so on. And I even have a story where I dapped one up that I thought was a fellow black brother, but he wasn't. He was an Emirati. He didn't understand anything I was saying. He was completely confused. But he didn't have his thobe and everything. He had Jordans. He had basketball shorts on. My man had a cap on. And I was like, oh, I was like, okay. So I went over, gave him salam, dapped him up, and was talking to him like, yo, okay, how long you been here, everything? And he was just like, ish? Like, he didn't understand nothing. So it was pretty funny because it took me some time to register. I'm like, oh, he's like, yo, I'm Emirati. I'm in Emirat. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And I'm looking at him sideways like, yo, he joking? He playing with me? But my friend comes over and he was like, no, that's Emirati for sure. You know what I mean? Based on how he was speaking. Similar to the Omanis, they have different shades. So we did go to Sheikh Zayed Grand Masjid. I remember I had my pick, my watch, and I had something else. I'm not sure if it was a pin, but at that time, the guy looked at my pick and was like, this is a weapon. And I'm trying to convince them like, okay, it's not a weapon. You know what I mean? It's for your hair. But obviously it was a metal pick with the whole black fist. They was like, oh, no, you get that on the way out. But we went in there, mashallah, it was nothing like I imagined. I think that at the time, it was one of the biggest masjids that I've been into. Interestingly enough, at the time, I didn't know that the Sheikh Zayed Grand Masjid was actually like a tourist attraction as well. I just thought it was a huge masjid, right? And they had security because they didn't allow me to bring my pick in there. I remember that. But when we got in, it took me like 30 minutes before I realized that, oh, you have non-Muslims, you have foreigners coming in. And I think the women had to wear they had to cover up, similar to the Astana Grand Masjid, where you have the women have to cover because, you have tourists going there. You have people that are interested in Islam as well. I saw a lot of people take the Shahada at these big masjids, right? And you have masjids like that in Malaysia. So at the time, it was my first experience. But the infrastructure there in Dubai, like, it's crazy. Some of the stuff you just scratching your head, like, okay, how did they do that? You know what I mean? Like, some of the stuff is just way too much. You know what I mean? In my opinion. You also notice the luxury cars and so on. But surprisingly enough, it was crowded though. I do remember the traffic was heavy, but they still had rules. It wasn't just crazy, because usually when people have fancy cars, they just hitting the gas, or they, you know what I mean? They kind of make it known, it's a little statement, they hit the engine a little bit. But funny enough, we didn't see anybody going crazy at night, depending on where we were. Yeah, highways and so on. But in Dubai, we actually didn't see that, like nobody going crazy with the cars, from what I remember. But surprisingly, the systems in place were very efficient. We also visited some of the traditional souks where they sold their spices, sold, gold and other things like that. We did go up into Burj Khalifa, and the view was amazing. And you can see a few different Emirates from the view, but it gives you an idea on how big it is. We also went to a date farm where you can find all of these different types of dates. And mashallah, it was very well organized the way they did it. They also sold some of their traditional, textiles and spices and so on. But it was organized inside of like a huge tent, right? Of course, because the sun is extreme. But it was very well organized, to my surprise. We went to Sharjah as well. We did some activities out there in Sharjah. We saw some of the residential areas as well. Going to the Emirates was a huge eye-opener to what it's like out there. I mean, experiencing different cultures and different environments in society. So the Emirates gives me like a mix of ultra modern and traditional values. I mean, you have a mix. Of course, it's tipping a little bit, you know what I mean? You have a mix of that. So I had a great time in the Emirates, and it is a place I would recommend someone to visit for sure. And even in terms of relocation, the Emirates is popular for that now. You have a lot of foreigners there, and even the ratio between foreigners and locals is it's always been uneven. I had some great memories there that I will never forget. If you also experienced the Emirati culture, drop your stories down below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.
If you would like to take a brief survey and check your Hijrah readiness, go to hijrahtest.com.